We don't condone drink driving.
Can we just point out, yes.
But pulling onto your driveway, have a couple of swigs of Prosecco, definitely condone it. You're on your own property, pull your car onto the drive, couple of swigs, boy, I have to go in and face the kids.
Yeah.
And it wasn't uncommon for people to go into petrol stations to pick up, to say, can I just have a look at your map, please? And they go, well, you have to buy it. You go, oh, bollocks, I'm not paying £7.
Kleenex for men tissues, the first bit of instructions, there is a lady in bed blowing her nose.
Well, that's
So
the
that is
euphemism.
It's time to adjust those shoulder pads, backcomb what's left of your hair, and jump into the DeLorean for a look back at what's possibly the best decade anyone could ever have grown up in.
Shall we play a game?
This is Bring Back the 80s with your hosts James Alderson and me, Andy Jackson.
Let's start another episode.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of the Bring Back the 80s podcast, James.
Too exciting.
Oh my goodness me, we're still here, still doing it. Thank you if you've watched, subscribed, listened, whatever you've done and everything.
Yeah.
Over the past couple of weeks or so, we're back with a new one every 2 weeks now.
I can only apologise.
We just do our best. We do our best. On this week's thrilling edition of the Bring Back the 80s podcast, James, nothing whatsoever to do with your T-shirt.
Okay. Yeah.
It's all about the cars that we grew up with. Funny story about the T-shirt, James.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I've got it in the car that I didn't bring. So it's a great T-shirt. You would have loved it.
Next week.
Next week, for the next episode, I'll bring it, and that won't be relevant. It's remember the two Ronnie sketches where they answer the question? That's what I'm doing with T-shirts.
We've been super clever. Super clever.
I am more clever than I realise.
So this time round, it's cars of the 80s.
Yeah.
I've compiled a list.
Oh, have you?
You'll be pleased to know, which we'll get to in a minute, of the best-selling cars of the 80s.
The best ones that sold at Christmas?
The best ones that sold throughout the entire... Not those cars. The best ones of the entire 80s. Would you like just to hazard an early guess at what you think the brand, like the major brand, might be that did best in the top 5 of 80s cars, James?
Oh my goodness. Vauxhall.
Hold that thought and we'll find out if you're right later on. Before we do any of that, it's time to reveal last week's mystery sound of the 80s.
Okay, yeah.
And we got a brand new one for you as well.
Yep.
So I thought it was really easy, and it turned out I was right. Here it comes from last week.
Yeah.
It's the mystery sound of the 80s. The mystery sound of the 80s.
And it is...
Look at that graphic.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be able to say to you, welcome to Channel 4. Now our first program, Countdown.
Countdown?
Countdown was the very first one. Very, very first programme. That was what made Channel 4 famous.
And it's still going now.
Yes.
Still going strong.
Absolutely.
Bloody brilliant, yeah.
But that was last week's. Well done to Roy White.
Well done, Roy White.
For for getting it right, coming through on the email as well. So you got a choice of the wonderful Bring Back the 80s super soft plush T-shirt in the size of your choice.
Of course, yeah. Being modelled here by the Ferrari. Or from the 80s, of course. Or tickets to any shows. If you fancy coming to a comedy night, it doesn't have to be my Bring Back the 80s show, which is the last one actually this weekend. So by the time you watch this, you can't come to Bring Back the 80s.
Unless you do a season 2 of the Bring Back the 80s comedy show.
Yeah, well, I'm writing it, but it's by the time it comes out, people who remember the 80s will probably all be dead. So
I think your exact words last time were, "I'm not sure I can be asked to finish it."
You know, I've written lots of things and I quite enjoy writing it, but bringing it all together and making it presentable, that's a different challenge.
We need to start a campaign for the next
tour,
the Bring Back.
Yeah.
But anyway, so tickets to any of James's gigs or Bring Back the 80s T-shirt.
Yeah.
Time to reveal this week's brand new mystery sound.
Okay.
See if you recognise this.
Is that my pulse?
I think it is every time you come in here, James, and we just start to get going.
Excited about the 80s.
Very exciting times. But if you recognise that sound, which would be a sound that should be very familiar to each and every one of us.
Yeah. I want to talk about that topic now, but I'm going to hold that thought till next time.
Hold that thought
Yes.
till next time. It's
Yes.
always the best thing to do
Isn't it?
is to hold it over.
As my wife says, it's always best to
Shut
up. Shut up. Close your mouth.
So you've had your prediction of
Yeah.
the car of the 80s, the best-selling car of the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, I think Astra, Cavalier, you know, maybe even like 80, 81 with the Viva and all that sort of stuff.
Could be.
Chevette, was that a Vauxhall?
Oh my God, that was the very first company car I had.
Yeah.
Was a Vauxhall Chevette back in the
drove
days.
one, yeah.
Back in the days when I had a proper job.
Yeah.
And it had a very weird thing that if it was like had a built-in safety thing where as soon as you got past 70, it would shake so violently and make such horrendous noises like it was going to fall apart. You never dared go past 70.
That was a safety feature of 80s cars. If it starts shaking like you're going to all die, then that's just letting you know you're going too fast.
It was the simple things with cars then as well that we take for granted now. I'm not even getting into like lights that turn themselves off when you leave the car or windscreen wipers that come on.
Yeah.
But the simplest of simple things like windows that would not leak when it rained. They were the quality control in the 80s, especially like when a new car came out and they hadn't ironed out all the bugs.
Yeah.
It would be a thing where water would come in the car as you were driving.
Yeah, there was only one car that didn't happen with in the 80s, and that was Bond's Lotus. That went underwater. That was the only one that didn't leak underwater. Everyone else, I actually drove a Peugeot that had mushrooms growing in the footwell. It leaked so much that the carpet was covered and was wet through, and I had to harvest the mushrooms before picking up the girls. So I drove to pick up one girl in West Hampton somewhere down to Chichester after meeting her at a nightclub a few nights before, and my dad said, "You're going to have to take that car, son." He had loads of rubbish cars. And I was like, oh Christ, it was one of those box-shaped Peugeot 201s or 301, something rubbish. Anyway, I was grateful for a car, and I got in there and they'd grown overnight again. And it's like, I'm going to have to get out there and slice them off. And she didn't know, but I was worried that by the time we'd finished the date and we got back in the car, there'd be another crop.
Yes. These are the things that we just were completely expected in the 80s. That you would not even expect the basics to work if the windscreen demister gave you a little crescent that you could peek through after half an hour.
Yeah.
That was a bonus.
It is. I mean, we've all driven cars where your passenger has moved the windscreen wipers. You move one and the other will go with it, or you just wipe it with your arm, the inside of the windscreen, and then you got a wet arm for the journey to school or the journey to work or whatever. But it's the heater worked, but usually about a minute before you got to your destination.
Absolutely, yeah. It was the cars would take, again, it was a thing where it would take a car a long time to warm up.
Yeah.
Perhaps you had to mess around with the choke and get the amount of choke right. I mean, there's another thing that you don't see. But let's see what the fifth best-selling car of the 1980s was now, James. Here we go.
Oh! Good morning, Mr. Mansell, sir. No doubt you've come to see the new Rover Fastback.
Metro, actually.
The Metro, of course. A true driver's car.
Handy around town?
Absolutely, Nige. Words right out of my mouth. Central locking, naturally. Lots more room than you're used to. And a sunroof, so you can feel the wind in your helmet. Four-speaker stereo.
And pros tip to win.
Radio cassette. Well, take it for a spin, Nige. Be my guest. Come on, Nige. Out you come. Yeah. Safe as houses, come on. Well,
I don't believe it. What stupid... Nigel, nice to see you.
Oh, gentlemen, I see you're admiring the new colour-keyed bumpers. Very smooth, very chic, very sexy, very bumpers. Very sorry, Nigel. Murray.
There we go.
What an 80s advert.
I've forgotten just how good the car adverts could be.
Yeah.
They don't make them like that anymore.
No, I mean,
sure.
Nigel Mansell and what's his face? Can't remember his name. The commentator there. And obviously a lady in stilettos.
Obviously.
With a leg up.
And it was the car salesman of the time would be the slightly smarmy guy dressed in the shiny suits.
Yep. Helping you get wind in your helmet.
Exactly.
Which we all need from time to time. Otherwise, it gets a bit stuffy. So, it's a Metro. I mean, the Metro, I can't remember if it was the GT. I can't remember what it was, but they definitely had a sporty version of the Metro. That would be Nigel Mansell's car.
There was a sporty version of every car that was brought out, and I think
turbo.
The car that you drove, no normal person had the sporty version. That was just for the rich,
of course,
people,
or for the young lads about 7 years after they came out. Then they'd end up but the second owners. And it was the Metro Turbo. I remember now. But the Metro was one of those cars that sort of replaced the Mini, or tried to, and it was quite reliable, but it was a little bit like driving a sewing machine. And even the sports version, they didn't quite nail it. It was never it was never a proper competitor with the Fiesta XR2i. That was the ultimate.
That was the ultimate.
Hatch,
yes,
really.
but that was where the term hot hatch was invented for, really, wasn't it?
It must
Definitely.
be. Yeah, Fiesta. That was my favourite word for a car and a
And
magazine.
magazine.
And an Escort, funnily enough. But they never did a White House Quarterly car. Or the Sport. Anyway, so great car. I mean, I'm not sure about the big Rovers. They were company cars, weren't they?
Rovers were always seen as like the old man's car as well, weren't they? They were, not quite the BMW, not quite the Audi. They were kind of like the aspiring middle managers.
Exactly,
would drive a Rover.
Yeah, someone pulled in a Rover, and there was maybe a year or two where people were like, oh, look at that, that's a nice Rover. And then after that, I was like, yeah, he's got a Rover. And then, as you say, or a Sierra, one of those. It was always the Sierra was a sort of a middle management company car as well. Definitely, but the Rover, was it called the Fastback? Was that what he called it?
I think it was the Fastback. Either that or that was a Gorilla. It was one of the two.
It was just an oxymoron, really, to have a sporty Rover. It was a real sort of misnomer. But I think, I would say 5th place is probably about right for the Rover. They're now owned by China, I think, aren't they?
But everything's owned by China. To be honest, in fact, we are. We are.
This podcast has just been taken over.
It won't be long, James. The way the things are going, it will not be long. Yes, there'll be as we speak. Chinese subtitles are now coming up on this video, James, and we've got no control over it.
It's not down to us.
Nothing to do with us whatsoever.
No.
But so the Metro was the 5th.
Oh, was it Metro, not Rover?
It was Metro. It was Metro that was actually the 5th best-selling type of car
of the 80s.
Of the 80s.
Yeah. Very few of those around now. You see them every now and again cropping up on eBay or Facebook. Some nice versions. But it was. I guess it was a very popular car, wasn't it? Shooting around.
They did come out. They kept them going as well, didn't they? All the way to the early 2000s. I think you could still get them. Yeah,
maybe. It's. I had one, brown one. Cream
cars
interior.
were always shit brown colour, weren't they?
Yeah, and cream cloth interior. But it did have a radio in it, so it had the upgraded option.
Did it have FM as well as AM and LW?
I mean, I tried to just listen to French radio, you know that. So LW was the only option for me. I didn't really mind, especially on the south coast driving around.
Funny though that FM was like an upgrade to the radio.
Yeah.
Let alone if you had one with a cassette in it as well. That was and you always have the same little bunch of cassettes.
Yes.
That would live in the car, and occasionally they would get chewed up, and you'd have to pull it out, wind the tape around the
while
pencil.
Still driving.
Whilst you're still, steering with your knees, as you do.
Juggling with the choke.
As was permissible. But you always had like a little selection of favourite tunes.
Yeah, I mean, you either had them if you're organised in a plastic open-up case with a clear top to it so you could see without opening, but that got so scratched up you had to open it anyway. Or like me, keep them all in the glove box, and then when you're driving, you open the glove box to get them out.
It's like the random selection, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's like a pick and mix of cassettes. Yeah. What am I going to play today? Oh, Meatloaf. Never mind. And then you open the cassette, and obviously the cassette's not in there. Because it's at home, because you put it in the hi-fi to listen to at the weekend. So a lot of empty cassette cases. They were the most frustrating thing when you're driving blind. Not driving blind,
obviously. Thing is as well though, with the very limited thing you'd have, like your dozen or so cassettes in the car. Now you've got Spotify on tap or whatever.
Yeah,
you got a choice of literally millions and millions of tracks.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you, but when I've got Spotify on, it's always the same old half a dozen.
It is
that I listen to.
The most pressed button on my car is skip. Just like, no. Why did I put these on the list? No. And then the problem is, though, because I never update the lists that play through the car, I've got the kids' playlists from when they were like 7 still on there. So I'm listening to Minions, I'm listening to manga, some nonsense from a Japanese TV show. I'll just never get around to deleting it. And it's like when you go to bed and lay on a crappy pillow. You only remember at the time that you need to replace your pillow. So every time I'm halfway through a long journey in the car, it's only when I'm listening to two songs from the Minions soundtrack that I think I've got to get home and delete all of this. It is just I've sung that banana song with the Minions so many times on my own on the M1. But yeah, that reminds me, when I get home, I'm going to delete all that.
I was going to say, going to go and have a banana. Thing as well about the sound systems in cars as well, they were always very tinny as well. There was never any bass. Do you remember the back parcel shelf speakers that you used to be able to have as an optional extra? You could actually have speakers in the back again as an optional extra, or you could go to Halfords or whatever and buy them to get them to fit it.
Yeah, and they used to have proper, very common car stereo showrooms where you'd go and walk into a full shop with all the car stuff in, with all the speakers and stuff. I mean, my sons have both got 70s and 80s cars, and they have front speakers, and that's it. And I remember having front speakers in my Beetle, one of my first cars, and we had to get a parcel shelf and the holes cut in it to put the speakers in it. And we had to go to a car radio showroom to get it done.
It's like a different time.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody had BMWs were notorious for having a radio cassette player as an optional extra. You couldn't, I mean, those cars were rip-offs to start with, and then to get in it after spending thousands and not have a bloody stereo in it, you'd be fuming.
Well, they're still playing the same game, though, because didn't people get up in arms about BMWs with heated seats? But you have to pay to subscribe to have your seat heated.
Really?
In cars,
That's a subscription.
That is a subscription, isn't it?
Yeah, bless them. Christ almighty.
Anything to screw an extra couple of quid out of us.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're slowly but surely working our way through the list. You ready for the 4th most popular car in the UK in the 1980s?
Yeah, I'm going to go Astra.
Let's find out if you're right, James.
Oh, look.
The shape of this car isn't just a designer's dream. It was honed by the wind.
In his helmet.
The new Ford Sierra. It's one of the most efficient, aerodynamic driver's cars ever made. Test drive the new Ford Sierra yourself. It's man and machine in perfect harmony.
See, I remember when those came out, and it was like they were they were space age.
Oh.
Nobody had ever seen a car with so many curves.
It was like a moon buggy.
Yeah.
Well, not a moon buggy. They weren't very space age. But the shape of them
They
was
literally
like
were
something
space
out
age,
of
James.
Starship Enterprise. Yeah, bizarre. When you saw it as a kid, you thought, what? You'd never seen a car like it. And now you look at it and think, Christ. And I love the way that they've advertised that as the bond between man and machine.
Yes.
It's not for a woman to drive, mate.
Absolutely not, no.
Don't want a bird in there. Get a bloke, get a geezer driving it. Man and machine. I thought that's lovely. It's a nice touch. But again, pushing the fact that it's middle management, it's people who promoted to that point, and that's never going to be a woman.
It's never going to be a woman, because all they were good for was making the tea and doing a bit of typing and a bit of flirting.
80s, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're not going to have a middle management lady. So it's not bonding lady and machine. Man and machine. Christ.
Now you would have to bond they and machine, James.
Yeah, well, that advert would be taken down within a second. Man and machine. So talking about men and man, I've got something that was the most important upgrade device of any car. Do you want to have a guess of what it might be?
Was it one of the crook lock steering locks to stop the car being stolen? Was that a good one?
No. I'll show it to you.
Kleenex on the back.
This is an original unopened Kleenex. What does it say underneath there?
For men tissues.
For men. Not man size, because originally it was called for men tissues. Now, why the hell we wanted tissues for men, I don't want to go into detail.
Have a look at the picture.
Yeah, can you just be very careful?
Really careful, James.
If you open this, I will honestly have to beat you up. This is unopened with the perforated. Do you remember the perforated top?
I remember the perforated top. Yes,
it's got the perforated top. It's still got tissues in it, and it is an 80s Kleenex. Not a pocket pack, not that advert. Do you remember that? Kleenex pocket pack.
Yeah.
This is the for men, and then they changed it to man-sized. But that is the original design with the sort of not almost like a dog tooth sort of design.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful, and. I mint condition. It's got the instructions on how to use a tissue on the back.
But this is what I noticed as well, because it's Kleenex for men tissues. The first bit of instructions, there is a lady in bed blowing her nose.
Well, that's the euphemism.
She's definitely wiping something off her chin
she's
there.
just wiping her face with a man. Men tissues. I mean, what we all had these. I'll take it back, thanks. We all had I'll hold it up so you can see it properly. We all had these. It's even got it. Look. On the back parcel shelf, which was another optional extra, the parcel shelf. You had it on the back, and I don't know why. What the hell were we doing in cars where we needed tissues all the time?
You could never reach, if you were driving, you'd never be able to reach the back parcel shelf. Unless it was, back at the time, perhaps when you were, let's say you were a young man and you had nowhere to entertain a young lady apart from the back seat of the car.
Yes, that's true, actually.
Maybe that would be, I'm sure that's not why your mum and dad put them.
No,
steamy
windows.
But it always used to live on the back along with two cushions.
Yeah, two cushions and sometimes a crocheted black and very brightly coloured blanket that your nan made that would go from the parcel shelf down the back seat. But yeah, so these I don't really. It's a weird thing because you couldn't wipe the windows with them because then you didn't end up with white bits all over. So you could think, well, maybe that was it. Maybe it was the condensation dripping down. But it obviously come back from a previous time. There was some reason back in the day why we needed tissues, and that just carried on into our grandparents and parents.
It was obviously the same sort of thing as you always needed, like car sweets.
Yeah.
For the car, you obviously needed the car tissues as well.
Yeah.
Like you say, they did make the miniature tissues as well.
Yes.
Which you would keep, I suppose, down by the side of you.
Yeah, a little box they used to have, didn't they, with a pull-out thing.
That's the one.
And this big one, the man-sized or for men tissues, new improved softness with strength. And that is actually my slogan. Not soft, hard, doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm going to put that back in this box out the way. But yes, when I found that, I thought, well, that's one of those things that goes along with the sparkling Corona Shandy unopened and that unopened box. It's just fascinating, really, and one of those many things that makes me bit of legend.
I think I'm just thinking. I think it might be. I've got a death wish, but I'm thinking that for our final podcast episode, we ought to open all these priceless items. We should open the Corona, the sparkling Corona. We should mop up the mess with the unopened 100 Kleenex man-sized tissues.
Well, even if it wasn't planned to be our final one, I think that would see me off. Sadly, James has died halfway through this episode because we've opened all his unopened items. Yeah, even the Sun Gold Malibu Ken. I'm not even sure if he's been opened. So, there's various items there that we can have great fun with, but that's never going to happen, Andy.
Speaking of great items, I'm getting a bit peckish, James.
Oh, are you?
I'm getting a little bit
What
peckish.
did you fancy?
Have you managed to bring anything? Because last episode, I managed to excel, I thought, with the Horlicks.
Yeah,
the Horlicks tablets.
Yeah, I've still got a little bit in my teeth from that, so thank you for that.
It was Valentine's, James, so don't be expecting that every episode.
No, okay,
so
that's
don't
fine.
be waiting now.
But you're welcome to open up my lunchbox surprise.
Here we go.
If you wish.
James's special lunchbox surprise.
So dive in and see what I've got for you this week.
There's a bit of heft to it this time.
There's a little
bit of heft.
Yeah, last time it wasn't really edible, was it, if you remember? It was just the envelope, but the smell from my wife's cheap perfume.
So this is just in case you're listening, not watching, this is the original Transformers lunchbox that I am allowed to open.
Yes,
I always have to double check. Oh my God. Look at this. The thing is, James, I've just before I reveal the mystery item, there is still the cheap perfume.
Yes.
That's going to be there forever now.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God. But this is absolutely beautiful. Of all the objects that of all the objects and foodstuffs that I would ever have coveted, this is a tin of, I don't actually know what's in it. I know it's a tin of stuff.
You've got your dusty little sweeties.
Dusty little boiled sweets.
Yeah.
But it's a commemorative tin commemorating the marriage of the Prince of Wales and Lady Diana Spencer back on the 29th of July 1981.
Yeah. And so I thought, what better way to bring our love of royalty and our love of cars together than car sweets, travel sweets, in a travel tin with the dusty sweets inside. They're actually new sweets. So
I was going to ask, Jason.
The new sweets, because I'm partial to on a travel tin sweet. And so feel free, it'll last you forever. We might have to take them out halfway through, but they are lovely. Rhubarb and custard. Do you remember rhubarb and custard?
I do.
So
my least favourite of all the combinations.
Oh, are they? Well, you are most welcome. These are manufactured in Glamorgan, which I think we can all agree is the home of travel sweets.
We've not thought this through, James.
No, we haven't. Have we? But I think it adds a certain je ne sais quoi. But yeah, so like you mentioned a minute ago, the travel sweet industry must have peaked at some point in the 80s. You can take it out. Struggle on.
That is delicious.
You don't like it at all. I love rhubarb and custard. I love that show. Anyway, so I think there must have been a boom of travel sweets. The people who made travel sweets and sold travel sweets were millionaires in the 80s, and thank God, because their demise was quick in the 90s and 2000s.
I think the thing is as well, though, there were no other refreshment options, really. Very, very limited refreshment options.
On a journey?
When you were on a journey.
Yeah.
Apart from your little chef and your happy eater, which was more of the savoury kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If you would go into a petrol station to fill up, chances are mostly would be actual bits for your car, would be what would be on the shelves, like oil and filters from, 20 years ago. Air fresheners and things like that. But very little in the way of the kind of food to make us fat that we're so happy
Wrigley's
with now.
You get some Wrigley's and some chewing gum and some Polo Mints at the till, and then they slowly introduced the odd bit of snacking, but certainly not a Greggs or a drive-through coffee shop.
No.
And Jack Castrol GTX, obviously, I've got the flask up behind your head there. We could go and get some oil, as you say, and maybe a seat cover.
I remember the first time that I saw alcohol for sale in a petrol station, and I thought, surely this can't be. Surely you're in a car. Yeah. Surely this cannot be permitted by law.
Well,
to be able to purchase alcohol whilst on the road, but obviously, it's a thing that we expect. You can't go past a little Waitrose or a little M&S now.
No.
To pick up your Prosecco for the way home.
Well, it takes the edge off, doesn't it, for the journey? On your last bit of journey home before you pop in and see the other half, you're like, I'll just have a couple of swigs of this as I pull onto the drive.
Vodka and Coke for the caffeine.
Well, that's what those cup holders are there for.
That's why they make those little ready cans, isn't it?
Yeah. We don't condone drink driving.
Can we just point out, yes.
But pulling onto your driveway, have a couple of swigs of Prosecco, definitely condone it. You're on your own property. Pull your car onto the drive, a couple of swigs, boy, I have to go in and face the kids.
Yeah.
Why does Daddy smell of alcohol? Well, he's been sat on the drive for an hour. That was me. Just keep drinking and go, okay, let's go in, put the kids to bed.
Are you numbing the pain before it even starts there, James? Well done. Very well done.
Thank you. Here to help.
But we were talking about the other day about your limited refreshment options you get. Because now there's everything, isn't there? I say there's everything. It's the same few little things wherever you go. There's always a Greggs.
Yep.
There's always, for some bizarre reason, a Cornish pasty place, isn't there? Which never used to be a thing.
No.
Unless you went to Cornwall.
Yep.
Cornish pasties were...
Cornish.
That's what you would go to Cornwall for.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you have to go.
You got your Greggs, you got your Cornish pasty, you got a little Waitrose, you got a little M&S.
W.H. Smith, usually.
W.H. Smith as well,
what
yeah.
saved them.
That's
Smith in the service
that
station.
and the airports, yeah.
And you go and get your maps. You get your map from a W.H. Smith. Look, this is a difference, you see. No longer do you see people driving along with this, like this, in the windscreen. Dad, watch out! I am trying to find, son, where we're going. It's like, but you can't see exactly actually where we're going, which is into another car. That I mean, that's another thing that was on the back shelf, wasn't it?
If you think about it as well, how much more dangerous would it be? Because I know that you get told off for even glancing sideways at your phone now.
Yeah.
But when you've got one of those bloody great maps literally covering the windscreen and you're trying to drive along, surely that would have been more dangerous than looking at your phone. Surely.
Yeah, I know. I mean, these were these ones were iconic. You have these. If you were a salesman like I was driving around a lot in the 90s, but 80s, 90s. These red ones for every town or city or county, and these white and blue
the
ones.
The A to Z ones, yeah. I'd forgotten about the red ones. Who made the red ones?
I don't know, but they weren't made in Czechoslovakia.
Estate Publications of High Street, Tenterden in Kent. Yes, it was. Yes.
Yeah. So some printer got into the mapping game, and these, of course, were SO. Mobile, all those people made these other maps. And this is obviously, I'm guessing, Wales and southwest England covered in one massive sheet of paper. How you plan a fucking route with one sheet?
Well, this is the thing. You had to have different maps. Like, say you were going from here to, for argument's sake, you had to go to Scotland. You would have your big A to Z, which was the size of a tabloid newspaper.
Yeah.
So you could see sort of like London at the bottom and Scotland at the top.
Yeah.
But then when you got to your destination, you would need to narrow it down with perhaps a street A to Z.
You couldn't do it with your finger and thumb.
Couldn't do it
and
with
just
your
zoom
finger.
in.
And you have to say, people would not believe this, but you would have to know the name of the street that you were going to, and then you would look it up and cross-reference it to a page and a grid square. It's quite a complicated thing to do, really.
Yeah, and it wasn't uncommon for people to go into petrol stations to pick up, to say, can I just have a look at your map, please? And they go, well, you have to buy it. You go, oh, bollocks, I'm not paying £7. I only need one road.
You're just going to go one place.
Yeah.
It's so true.
You're going, do you know where North Street is? And you go, what? Not really. No, you know where North Street is? You go, you buy a map, you'll know. Can I use your toilet? No, there's no real public toilets in here. It's just for staff. It's just like, oh my God. So, yeah, the amount of times that I would go in and ask to have a look at their map, and if they were friendly enough, they'd let you. But yeah, well, first time I went to see my now wife, the present Mrs. Alderson, I had to plan my journey. I was living in Cambridge at the time, all the way from Cambridge to Yorkshire, with a map. And it was one of the big maps that your granddad's had, with the big blue things, AA or RAC. And it, as you say, from page to page, I was had little post-it notes, just tab, just had to turn the page from the passenger seat as I'm going across a junction.
And it would never go, you'd never go on your journey from page 3 to page 4.
Not on those, no.
It would always be from page 3 to page 99.
Yes.
There was never any rhyme or reason as to the way that the way that the maps worked.
No, I don't understand why that happened, but that is spot on. Yeah,
I was always hopeless with maps. Believe it or not, I used to be a service engineer back in the days when I had a proper job, and I occasionally had to do like London with a thick A to Z, thick.
Yeah.
Just hopeless.
Yeah.
And my job would have been so much easier now if I could have just punched it into the sat nav.
Yeah, and we didn't have as many petrol stations, service stations, or anything. So where we pulled over at the time, I've got no idea. We must just have wanged it up on a curb. Well, we didn't go on a curb, that'd be crazy. But we would pull it over to the side. Just pull over to the side all the time and have a little look.
Put your hazards on,
Yeah. I've got one thing here which was prolific in the 80s, and that is, of course, Top Trumps. And this is a sports car Top Trumps from the 80s, of course, which has, you guessed it, a free pack offer inside.
Of course.
So you can go in, and this is made in West Germany. That's before the wall came down. So Top Trumps, and look, it's advertising power boats, fabulous buggies, and there's a collector's free gift card in here, which gives you 20 points. I don't know what that means, but you've got to allow 21 days for delivery, please. Obviously, Hermes were delivering that. So, or Every, whatever they're called. But look at the classics. Look at these classics. The Opel Manta is some legendary.
Yeah, well, I was confused with the Opel Manta because that was basically Vauxhall, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they did.
Just from a different country.
Yeah, Ford Capri, obviously the coupe, the Jaguar, Alfa Romeo, and Lancia.
I had a Lancia.
Did you?
Beta.
Did you?
For a short time. It was the biggest. There was more rust than bodywork on it. It went very fast, but not for very long.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, that was the same with most cars, I think, especially downhill. All my cars went rapid, getting uphill, putting it back into first gear, just thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to make it. But yeah.
They were the days when cars, you could almost, if you sat and watched hard enough, you could actually see them rusting. You could actually see little bits of wheel arch falling. Whereas now cars don't seem to rust quite as quickly as they did back then.
No, and you could also see the fuel gauge go down because cars just weren't economical.
No.
I mean, my Beetle did about 15 to 20 miles to the gallon. And I think I had a Fiesta. That was maybe 25 to 30 miles to the gallon. But there was nothing, you'd never heard of a car doing 50 or 60 miles to the gallon. And diesels weren't that popular. You'd have a diesel van.
And they would be very noisy, or taxis. You might have a diesel London taxi.
Yeah.
But again, you could hear them coming from miles away.
Yeah. So the economy of cars, and that's why, I guess that's why they didn't have to worry about selling other things, because we were always stopping at a bloody petrol station to put petrol in. It's when cars became more economical, they think, bollocks, we're going to have to sell other shit here. How are we going to get the money in? Let's sell more than just air fresheners and oil. Let's get a Mars bar in here. And they could only fit 5 Mars bars on the shelf, of course, because they're so bloody huge. So yeah, they had to really start thinking outside the box to make some money. And fruit, not fruit, nor veg, chocolate and sweets. That was the answer. Chocolate and sweets.
Chocolate and sweets.
Yeah, and that was the end of my healthy living.
Shall we continue with our stroll through the top 5 cars in third place?
Yeah.
Let's have a look and see who's advertising this one as well.
The new Cavalier LX. It's all yours now.
It's me.
Oh, have you got it?
Certainly have.
Well, what's it like?
Terrific. It's got everything. Alloy wheels, sunroof, sports seats, great engine.
Yes, all right, but when will you be home?
That's why I'm calling. I'm stuck in the most horrendous traffic jam you could ever imagine.
Really? Well, I'll expect you when I see you then.
Could be hours.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
The new Cavalier LX from Vauxhall, around £8,500. Once driven, forever smitten.
£8,500.
Yeah.
As advertised by Martin Shaw.
Of course.
He was in the professionals, wasn't he?
Probably.
Was he Bodie or was he Doyle?
Yes.
Yes, one of those.
He just pulled over checking his maps.
And a phone,
yes.
a car. In fact, he actually had a car phone, whereas this was... Yeah. This Motorola is a mobile phone.
Proper mobile.
That was like the first company when I was back in the days again of having a proper job. My car phone was attached by wire to the car. You couldn't leave the car. It was a car phone.
That's why it was car phone warehouse. But that was... Cavalier never did an in-car mobile phone as an option. I'm sorry. They can't have done. I don't think Vauxhall Cavaliers ever had that. I love the passion that Martin had in that advert. Like, he really couldn't give a shit. His wife, he didn't want to see. He didn't like the car. He didn't like the country. He was just sat there going, yeah, I'm really stuck in traffic. I just can't be asked to do anything. I'm just sat here in his car and just, see you another time. He's pulled over, he's checked his maps, he's a bit lost, and he's trying to work out why he's got a gadget in the car worth more than the car. That mobile phone, that car phone was probably worth £1,000 back then.
I remember when I had mine, it was something like, back then, 50p a minute to make a phone call, and like we were only allowed to phone the office.
Oh, really?
We couldn't don't use it for personal calls, otherwise that's coming out your wages.
That is ridiculous.
But you had to phone back, and it was now you get unlimited minutes, unlimited internets.
You had to really think if you wanted to send a message or make a phone call on a phone back in the 80s, because it would just be astronomical.
Yeah,
and I don't think they did high rental charges. I think they didn't have to then. The rental charges I don't think were as much as we pay now, as in to have it every month, but these days it includes minutes, of course. But back then it was more, they'll just make a bomb from every minute you spend on a phone.
Yeah, and the phones were hugely expensive as well.
Yeah,
to start with. Now you can get a phone for next to nothing if you want a basic phone.
Yeah.
Whereas those you were talking the equivalent, of a car. Yeah, a lot of money.
The Cavalier LX. The Cavalier, that shape, was trying to compete with the Sierra, wasn't it? They tried to do the smoothness of it, but it was a bit like a smooth shed, wasn't it? They had all the metal windows and the metal frame still, and I can still hear it going as you're winding a window down. I'm sure they did the electronic windows, but that would have been a top optional extra. Vauxhall really struggled to compete with the Sierra at the time. The Sierra was the ultimate goal, really, for, as you say, middle management. But then the Cavalier, that was nice. And they did well with getting Martin Shaw involved with the pretend phone, phoning his wife.
Nobody's a phone.
He's off up the road to be unfaithful. He doesn't care. He's trying to find her house in a RAC map. But yeah, great. Cavalier. So that's the third most popular.
Yeah, third most popular.
This is really
car.
limiting the second and first most popular. Okay.
Can you remember what your guess was for the first?
Well, I said Vauxhall,
you
didn't
said
I?
Vauxhall, yeah.
But I didn't realise
yeah.
the specific models. But I would probably go with Fiat. If we're going specifics, it's got to be a Fiesta, I think. That'll be my first top.
We'll find out. We haven't got many to go now.
No.
Let's see what the next one is then.
Okay.
This is number 2 coming up right now.
The Ford Fiesta. Never has more advanced engineering gone into a small car. The Fiesta's been designed to give 86% all-round vision. Good visibility means a safer car. A car that's easier to park and a pleasant, airy interior. Somewhere for odds and ends, somewhere for maps and books. And with the back seat folded down, even somewhere for the kitchen sink. The gearbox is a delight. And the Fiesta's dual-circuit brakes and advanced suspension design help you to stop in a straight line if you have to brake violently. It has front-wheel drive and the widest track in its class. No baby ever held the road better. Why not pop into your Ford dealer and test one for yourself? The Ford Fiesta. It's a very advanced baby.
Why were they calling the car a baby as well?
I mean, I don't know, actually.
Why are they calling it a baby? It's a really weird thing to say.
Un-British as well.
Yeah.
If it was an American, like, hey, this is a hot baby or something. But she's getting a kitchen sink in the back, of course, and he's on the phone to tell his wife he's not going to be home yet. These are the most cliched adverts. She can reverse it, mate, into a parking space. Have you seen this? Bless her.
One of the things that was the selling point there, I don't know if you missed it, was that it said there was even a place for your odds and ends.
Yeah.
There was a place to keep your odds and ends.
Thank God.
Obviously somewhere to keep your man-sized tissues and your maps and your travel suites.
Yeah.
Otherwise, where would you keep them?
No, and she was doing very well driving that.
All by herself.
That was the advert. The advert was focusing so much on the fact that, look at this bird. She's having a go, bless her. She can drive this baby. Do you need a kitchen sink, darling? In it goes. There we are. God. I mean, it's a lovely looking car. That Fiesta, I mean, that was great. If you saw that now. I mean, my son's, he's got the Talbot, that car gets so many looks. And that Fiesta, if it was out on the road now, people would be stopping and pointing. Back then, people didn't give a shit, did they? But it was just, the Fiesta was... I mean, I guess it was called a baby because everyone was bringing out fancy, good, solid, big cars.
And I suppose if you think back to those times, the cars, the small cars were small.
Yeah.
Whereas now, if you've got like a traditional house with a traditional garage that was built perhaps back in the 60s or 70s, you will not get a car in the garage and you get the car in, but you'll have to climb out the back window to get out of it.
And it goes back even further. When you go back to cars that are built in the 30s, look at their garages, you couldn't get an 80s car in it.
No.
I mean, they're so tiny, so cars are getting bigger and bigger, and the roads, of course, are not. So it's exciting, but it is proving difficult to drive your baby in the roads these days if you've got a proper sized car. That's got to be a sexist reference, hasn't it? Talking about this baby.
Look at this baby.
Hey, here she comes. But she had a classic haircut, didn't she? She had a Princess Di.
It's a Princess Di. It was just almost like on these wonderful travel suites. There we go. It just occurred to me the reason why cars are getting bigger is not to make people buy new garages, is because we're all getting bigger. There's nothing.
How dare you?
Other reason whatsoever.
It's because we keep having these treats every time we do an episode. Keep insisting on opening my lunchbox and airing my helmet.
Well, I'll tell you what, the way around that is I'll keep getting you treats that are a bit like the Horlick sweets, and you keep getting me treats that are like the rhubarb and custard.
Yes.
And we'll be fine.
We'll be fine, yeah. Great. Okay. Well, that's knackered my guess then, hasn't it? I thought that the Fiesta. So the best one has got to be the Astra. It's got to be an Astra, surely. Vauxhall Astra. Could it be anything else from the 80s? I mean, the Capri, but I think by the late 80s that was over. So let's go for it.
Let's have a look and find out. The biggest selling car in the UK in the 1980s was...
When you're Britain's favourite car, it's inevitable that you'll attract a few challenges. A fact that's not escaped the Ford Escort. So to make sure it stays ahead of the game in 1986, it's introducing a few changes. The dashboard and interior have been completely transformed. There's a new sound system. The doors have Chubb high security locks. The new wheels have optional anti-lock brakes, specially developed for front-wheel drive cars. There are new lights, new bumpers. And under the bonnet, there's another first. A new 1.4-litre lean-burn engine, which gives a class-beating combination of performance and economy. Well, that seems to have done the trick. So there it is, your new Ford Escort. Well, you don't stay ahead by standing still.
Yeah, I remember the slopey fronts coming in. And that was the Sierra that started all of that.
Absolutely. That's all cars looked like the Sierra. But I remember my second ever company car. My first company car was the Vauxhall Chevette. And my second ever company car was the Ford Escort.
The Escort was the obvious upgrade from a Fiesta. If you got a Fiesta and then you were making a bit more money, you get an Escort. It's basically a Fiesta with a boot. But lovely. And I mean... Then they did the slopey front Escort like you just saw in the advert, then the slopey front Fiesta, and everyone wanted slopey fronts. And I got slopey front, and it's from my chin down to my hips. But the funny thing is on that advert we saw that spinny steering wheel thing. That did that. Anyway, if you were driving, it just started moving. The wheels are jiggling around, and especially when you got 70 miles an hour, steering wheels started going everywhere. But I love the fact that they promoted the fact that it had a 1.4 engine as an upgrade. It's like, Jesus Christ, you could barely move. But yeah, Escorts. Yeah, of course it was an Escort. They're just such a mid-range sort of car for... it might be for
everyone,
a dad or a mum.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too big, wasn't too small. It was a hatchback still, and the Escort XR3i. Just the car of most teenage boys' dreams, really. Obviously they couldn't have a Ferrari or a Porsche Turbo that we all had on our bedroom walls in red frames. I'm sure girls did too, but mostly boys. I'm sure. But it's a classic, mate. It's a classic.
Am I allowed to touch?
Yeah, they're fine. I mean, they are 80s, but yeah, it is the Testarossa, is it?
I think it is. Yes, I'm no car.
Oh, no, actually, this is behind me.
All right.
I don't know what that one is. But it's probably still is. No, the F40. I don't know what it is. Testarossa probably. Wasn't that Miami Vice? I think that's Miami Vice had that, didn't they? But yeah, it's a classic, and the boys had it on the bedroom walls. But when you actually had the option, I remember one of my rich mates. He had an XR3i, and when he was like 17 from his dad, and it was just a dreamy car, really. And Ford really nailed it, didn't they?
Absolutely. Well, they had the 3 out of the 5.
Did they?
Of the top.
What was it?
Top 5.
Fiesta, Escort, and Sierra.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And then Vauxhall.
Vauxhall were in there, yeah.
Yeah. And who was the 5th one?
You're asking me now to remember back that far.
I love the fact that we love the 80s, don't we? What happened? Don't know, mate. Don't know. No, but it's felt good to me.
It is literally a thing. Like, where you go into a room and you don't know where you got it. This is literally, we were talking about this 20 minutes ago, James.
It's like me on stage sometimes. I walk on and go, why am I here again? What was I doing? Was I here for the fridge? Oh, dear. Yeah, but yeah, number 5 was a car. Number 4 was a car, was Cavalier.
Yeah.
3 was the Sierra, wasn't it?
Something like that.
2 was Fiesta, and number 1, Escort. No, great. I mean, my mum had a company car. And my dad had so many different cars, but very few were from the 80s, mostly 60s, 70s cars, an old Renault 4 and all these things with the gearbox, gear stick on the dashboard. It was bizarre. But a lot of French cars, very popular, weren't they? Citroën. I was surprised. Citroën Zara, was it? Or Citroën something or other. But yeah, I'm surprised Citroën didn't make an appearance in any of it.
No, there was the Citroën ZX as well was the one. They had that weird air suspension thing, didn't they?
God, yeah.
Where you could literally make it go up, and for no reason whatsoever.
No.
It would just go up and down.
I find it quite useful. Lowering me down to the curb like the buses do to get me off it now. How do you get, Dad? But yeah, I could just roll out onto the curb, couldn't I now? But it's true, actually. That was considered quite futuristic.
Yeah, and they were the great thing about those was people realised when wheel clamps were introduced that when it was lowered down, and the suspension had been lowered, you just let the air out or whatever it was you did. Yeah. You couldn't get a clamp on them.
Oh, that's a good
So
idea.
people were driving those in London where the clamping was invented. So you couldn't get clamped, which I think was quite a genius idea.
Yeah, I used to have a wheel clamp for my Beetle because we spent so much money doing it up that I used to clamp it wherever I parked it so that they couldn't nick it. Because, those crook locks that you mentioned earlier in the episode, they were always great. And they were so popular. And again, with the sweet guys, whoever made those steering wheel clamps must have made a fortune.
Yeah.
Because it was so easy to nick a car. I heard. To get a coat hanger, you could prise the window down, because we've all prised the window down in the 80s. You put your hands either side of it and just force it down because, the winders come off.
Yeah.
And so you could get that down, you'd unpop the lock with the little pulley thing on the top of the door and the inside of the door, and then the wiring underneath the steering wheel, you could give it a little zhuzh, and your car's gone. And so you had to have the steering lock because they're so difficult to break them off. And they did all sorts. They did a steering lock across the steering wheel, steering lock across it, and gripped your gear knob for some reason.
Yeah. And one that went down to the brake pedal or the clutch pedal as well. Yeah.
And
I'm just thinking, with all your experience here, James, there's some copper who's ticking off a list of unsolved car thefts in the 1980s. They we have our man.
Well, they should have me presenting them all, like Raj out of Crime Stoppers or whatever he does, because I could give you some tips on how to secure your vehicle. But yeah, they even did one that had late 80s, that had like a little smoke thing that came out. That really did throw a spanner in the works when you're trying to get cars that weren't yours, apparently. Can't see where you're going. The whole car's full of smoke.
Sounds incredibly safe, James.
Oh dear. Yeah. So but that was back in a time where everyone had a driveway or a garage or something, and so you felt, and the garage wasn't full of all the stuff you've run out of space in the house to put. So my garage, I don't know about yours, is full of stuff. Mostly this sort of shit. You need stuff. Can't get a car in it.
I don't know anybody who keeps their car in the garage. Nobody I know.
But 80s, they did. You had a bit of racking and shelving for your oil and a spare tyre and maybe a whatever.
Well, you had to have your tools because your cars were constantly breaking down.
Yeah.
And back in those days, the proper men would know would know how to fix the car. I never had a clue.
No.
I had to take it to Halfords and be ripped off.
Well, it'll be your local garage as well. There'd be a local car garage down the road, wouldn't there? So Halfords, that back then, I don't know about in London, but back then you go to a Halfords and ask them to do something to your car, they're not doing anything. They'll show you where you can get your bulbs or a fan belt or a wiper blade, but you don't never come out and change a light on your light whatever configuration or a oil or anything. Now you mention something to them and they go, we can come out if you want for £46.40. We can walk out in that car park and change a wiper blade for you, mate. It's like you can shove your £46.40 in their ass. I can do it myself. And I go out into the car park and 7 hours later I've fitted a wiper blade, mate. I'll show you whose money's worth nothing. I spent 7 hours of my time for 46 quid. Or what I'd like to do actually is I can actually change a wiper blade pretty quickly, so I get them out of Halfords, go and change it really quickly in the car park, go on the motorway, they both fly off on the motorway, and I've just got two metal spikes just scratching my front windscreen, and now I need to go back to Halfords and get them to change a windscreen.
I actually had a car that did that it did fall off so much I actually etched a little arch into the windscreen.
What a nice touch. That's lovely. A bit of glass etching on your Ford Cavalier, Vauxhall Cavalier. Oh dear. Yeah, good fun. Great. Well, I'm glad that we've discovered those popular cars. They were always such nice things to see on the road, and when I see them every now and again, and you do get a little glimpse of the old classic 80s cars.
You never ever see a Sierra though. Never ever.
That is true.
Have I seen a Sierra?
No, and I don't know why, but a lot of them were rags to the end of the earth, weren't they? Because they were cars that people loved to just bomb about in. You see the odd mint one, like at a show. Sierra Cosworth, one of those. Do you remember those?
Yes.
RS and all that stuff. But you're right. You see a Fiesta, You might see the odd Escort. I've seen even a Montego.
Yeah.
But not, and obviously the odd
Sierra,
Talbot.
yeah.
There's only 2 Talbots on the road, and my son's got one of them, the lucky bugger. But yes, you don't see Sierras. That's true.
No.
Yeah,
We've done the best of the best of the best.
Oh, yeah.
Just time for one more.
Oh, okay.
The worst of the worst.
Oh.
Would you like to hazard a guess at to what the brand could be?
It's got to be Lada, isn't it?
Let's have a look and see.
The Ladas. Each has an extra thick skin. Reinforced suspension. Underbody corrosion protection. Each Lada is built to survive. To take on loads. And the roughest of roads. To stop safely. To go smoothly. The Ladas. Tough cars, tame prices. Test one at your nearest Lada dealer tomorrow.
Why tomorrow? Let us know you're coming, will you? Phone us today, but don't turn up out of the blue, mate. We've got to glue some of these cars back together. Some of these test drives have been a bloody nightmare. After seeing that advert, it's like a Laurel and Hardy cars. All the doors are dropped off.
No way any of those Ladas would have survived any of those things. But if you saw in the very small print, the Ladas started at £2,800.
Well, yeah.
Where your other cars are in your 5, 6, 7, 8s.
Yeah, and I believe there's still a thing in Russia or over that sort of way, a Lada, but they really... Skodas and Ladas were the butt of everybody's jokes in the 80s, and Skoda
have turned that round, though,
just a
haven't they?
revolutionary sort of evolution of fate, really. They did it themselves initially in the late 80s, started to turn their reputation around, but then in the 90s I think they were bought by VW, weren't they? And then that's when it really helped. They're basically VWs.
They are VWs with a cheaper badge, aren't they?
Yeah, well, not these days. Even not either. The same sort of price, which is crazy. But yeah, you watch that Lada advert. I mean,
they were nobody wanted to be seen. If your dad drove a Lada, you would say, "I'll tell you what, Dad, don't come and pick me up. I'll walk home."
Yeah.
They were the squarest of the square cars in both, what's the word I'm looking for, in actual shape and that other
every
word.
way, literally and virtually. Yeah. I think that advert, they tried their bloody best.
They did. They gave it a good go. But
those cars were driving in those adverts. They weren't Ladas, were they? There was something else with a Lada shape. Test drive. Give us a call and test drive tomorrow or in a week. Give us a couple of months to sort this out, and you will have a car you can do this to. I mean, who's gonna? You go pick it up and you go, right, I'm just going down the Serengeti, mate. I'm just going to give this a proper test drive with bloody hippos coming out of the Thames. Anyway, Lada.
You know you were one of life's failures if you were driving a Lada.
Oh, God.
It's a sad state.
Sad indictment of everybody. Yeah.
I miss my Lada.
Good old
anyway,
Lada.
there we go.
Yeah, we did it.
That's it. That's another edition of the Bring Back the 80s podcast.
Yeah, enjoyed it. And then obviously, in very 80s theme, it was a very male-orientated episode, I feel. But hopefully, the ladies feel like we connected with them with the kitchen sink and the baby we drove, the Fiesta. That was for you. No, but it's, everybody's got cars. Everyone's got every car of every type now. So it shows how far we've come.
Exactly. And you are allowed to use the man-sized tissues, and you can eat the man-sized Yorkies as well.
Why not? Yeah. Enjoy your driving, whatever you're doing, and drive safely.
If you want to let us know what this week's mystery sound was that was at the beginning, you can get through to us on bringbackthe80spodcast.com. Any of the socials there will let you know if you are the winner next time around. But until then, we'll see you next time for another edition of the Bring Back the 80s podcast.
Wonderful. See you soon.
See you next Tuesday.
Thanks for listening to this week's edition. We'd love it if you could subscribe in your favourite podcast app. And don't forget, there's a video version on YouTube too. You can contact us using the links in the show notes and on the YouTube channel. And we'll see you next time for another edition of Bring Back the 80s.